Canada is the second-largest country in the world, stretching across nearly 3.8 million square miles and covering 6 different time zones. Its landscape is incredibly diverse, ranging from the snow-covered Arctic tundra and towering Rocky Mountains to endless prairies and the lush rainforests of the Pacific coast.
But Canada's diversity is not only geographical. Over thousands of years, people from different cultures, religions, and languages have helped shape the nation into what it is today. From indigenous civilizations to waves of immigrants arriving from across the globe, Canada gradually evolved into one of the most multicultural countries on Earth.
The story of Canada begins long before European explorers arrived. Around 16,000 years ago, groups of early humans crossed the ancient Bering Land Bridge that once linked Siberia and North America during the last ice age. As the glaciers slowly melted and sea levels rose, this route disappeared, isolating the continent from Asia forever. Over time, these early inhabitants spread across the land and developed unique societies, traditions, and languages. In the eastern forests lived Algonquian and Iroquoian-speaking peoples. Across the vast central plains, Cree-speaking communities followed enormous herds of bison. Along the Pacific coast, indigenous groups relied on salmon fishing and cedar forests, while the Inuit adapted to the harsh frozen conditions of the Arctic North. Unlike most of the Americas, Canada's first contact with Europeans happened centuries before Christopher Columbus. During the early 11th century, Norse explorers from Greenland sailed westward across the Atlantic. Led by Leif Erikson, they reached parts of North America believed to include Baffin Island, Labrador, and Newfoundland. The Vikings even established a temporary settlement known today as L'Anse aux Meadows, making it the earliest known European settlement in the Americas. However, the Norse presence did not last. The settlements were eventually abandoned, and knowledge of the continent faded from Europe for hundreds of years. European interest in the region returned in the late 15th century. In 1497, Italian explorer John Cabot, sailing for England, reached the shores of North America. Over the next decades, explorers from France, England, Spain, and Portugal all investigated the region, though permanent settlements remained rare. France would eventually establish the strongest early presence. In 1534, Jacques Cartier explored the Gulf of St. Lawrence and claimed the territory for France, using the indigenous word Canada to describe the region. Later, in the early 1600s, Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec City and helped establish New France as a growing colony centered around the fur trade. Meanwhile, the British also expanded their influence, particularly through settlements in Newfoundland and the Hudson's Bay Company, which controlled large areas of northern Canada. By the 18th century, Britain and France were competing for dominance across North America. This rivalry eventually erupted into war. During the 7 Years' War, British forces captured Quebec in 1759 after the famous Battle of the Plains of Abraham. By 1763, France surrendered most of its North American territories, placing Canada under British rule. Even under British control, French culture and language remained strong, especially in Quebec. These cultural differences would continue shaping Canada's identity for centuries. Following the American Revolution, many Loyalists who supported Britain moved north into Canada, helping expand settlements in regions like Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Ontario. At the same time, explorers and traders pushed westward toward the Pacific coast, opening new trade routes and settlements across the continent. During the 19th century, political reforms and growing cooperation between the colonies eventually led to Confederation. On July 1, 1867, the Dominion of Canada was officially created, uniting several British colonies into a self-governing nation within the British Empire. The construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway soon connected the country from east to west, helping solidify control over its enormous territory. Yet expansion also came with hardship for Indigenous peoples, many of whom faced displacement, broken treaties, and forced assimilation policies such as residential schools. By the early 20th century, Canada had become an increasingly prosperous and industrialized nation. It fought alongside Britain during both World Wars and gradually gained greater independence from British control. In 1982, Canada fully patriated its constitution, completing its transition into a fully sovereign nation while still retaining the British monarch as ceremonial head of state. Today, Canada is recognized around the world for its democracy, diversity, and multicultural identity. Built through centuries of migration, cooperation, conflict, and compromise, the country continues to reflect the many peoples and cultures that helped shape its history.